Hey guys, my name is Venkatesh, and in this particular tutorial, I would be talking about what is the REST and what is it all about. Okay, so now without going to further delay, let's start with the topic. What is REST? Now let me move to my whiteboard and open up my first slide. Okay. Um, as a definition, REST acronym is a representational state transfer. Okay, we'll definitely talk about what does it mean state transfer. Okay, and what does it mean of representational. It's nothing but is an architectural style for a distributed hypermedia system. Okay, and which is actually firstly presented by row fielding. Okay, and when it is being produced, it was produced at 2000. Okay, so in short, if we talk about before moving to another representational state, what does it mean by the representation of a state? Okay, so first of all, most of the time when we talk about the REST, we are talking about the resources. Okay, resources. So what are the resources? Resources could be anything upon whom we want to be query upon. For example, if we talked about students or employees, so these are the students, and we can majorly perform four category of operation. Either we can add it, either we can delete it, okay, or either we can update it, or we want some data from all the student or all the employees. So this is the particular resource, okay, and we have a dedicated URI for that. Okay, so but we are not expecting all of the data from the backend, because there might be the millions of students or thousands of students, but we want only few fields of them. For example, a student contain address field as well. But as a representation of a state, or is a subset of that state, we want only its name, ID, name, and let's say age and class. That's it. Okay. So this is representing some partial data of a particular state. So that is a representational state transfer. Okay. It simply means when a REST API is called, server will transfer to the client a representation of state. Means when client requests something to the server, it return as a representation. It's a representation of a requested resource. Okay, it's just give you a representation, a pilot representation of actual resource, not the actual resource. So that is all for the representation. Okay, now moving to another slide, which is when we're talking about specifically the REST web services. And when we talked about what are the web services, first of all, any program, if any program to program communication is set to be a web services. Web services are specifically designed to consumed by another application. So that's all about web services, nothing else. Okay, if two programs are communicating with each other and they are producing and consuming some kind, exchanging data. So that's all about the web services, all about in a layman language. Okay, so before proceeding further, we must understand these two terms. If we talked about the REST APIs, okay. So first is what is the client? Okay, the client is a person, or it could be any software who uses the API. It can be a developer. For example, you as a developer can use Twitter, okay, API to read the data and write the data from the Twitter. Create a new tweet, do more actions in the program that you write. Your program will call the Twitter API, okay, and the client can also be a web browser. when you go to the Twitter website, your browser is the client who call the Twitter API. Okay, so client is nothing. Client could be anything. Client could be program or user, or you himself. You are logged into the Twitter website by using your laptop. Okay, you logged in the Twitter, and Twitter is further is calling and making an API connections or API hits to internal servers details. And so this is the client. Okay, this would be the client. Okay, resources on which you are, for example, tweets could be resources on you are adding resources, you are adding tweets, you are commenting on tweets. These could all these things are the resources. Resources can be any object the API can provide. Okay, information about Instagram API, for example, a resource can be a user, photo, hashtag. Each resources has a unique identifier. Okay, identifier can be a name or a number. Okay, now moving to another slide. So okay, when particular, it's an as we understood, this is an architectural style, this is a design. Okay, so basically it must satisfy these 6 principles. Okay, so first of all, it's must be a uniform interface, statelessness, client server architecture. Okay, it's a layered system, it's a cacheable, and code on demand. Okay, so we'll just talk one by one. Okay, so okay, first talk about the client server. Okay, so first of all, client and server. Okay, so this could be uh, exist independently, first of all. Okay, and server do not respond any request until unless some client is request some resources at him. Okay, it's just a response, it's just a way to respond to a particular client. Okay, so it's these means that these are the two independent entities and they can coexist without each other, and server's responsibility is to wait and serve the upcoming request, and client's responsibility to query for a particular resource which could exist in a server. Okay, that is all about the client server architecture. Okay, now the second is statelessness. What is the statelessness? Okay, if we talk about the statelessness, so by default HTTP protocol is a stateless. What does it mean of stateless? Okay, so if we talk about stateless, it's meaning suppose that we have you are a user, or you are a user and logged in some system. Okay, and suppose that you have logged into facebook.com and you have logged in successfully, and then you are clicking on multiple photos or posts or walls, and this here is the at the back end there is a giant server exist of the Facebook. Okay, and you have hits tons of requests. Okay, because in each click would be a separate request. Stateless means that even is R1, R2, and Rn. It means that no two requests have any relation between them. Means it upcoming request or previous request don't have any information about the previous request. So for the server, each and every request must be considered as a new request. Every request is a new request for the server. There are different ways to determine whether it is a continuous session or continuous value. That would be based on the JWT token or JWT token, cookie based. So that is a different story. But altogether, every request must be stateless. Means it is the by default is following follow the procedure. Okay. So that is all about the statelessness. We have covered layered architecture. Okay. What does it mean by the layered architecture? We are the client, as we are a client accessing our server. So suppose that initially our system was small and it is directly responding, okay, without any layered architecture system. But now we have moved into the AWS architecture where auto scaling works and everything. So what we have added one of the firewall, okay. Thereafter we have added a load balancer, okay, and now we have hundreds of the servers which are running over there, and we really don't know who is going to serve this particular request. So this is this is known as a layered architecture. Client must be keep unaffected, is unaffected by how we are going to design our backend system, or how many servers are in between there. So it's really doesn't matter, and it should not be affected at all. So that is all about the layered architecture. Cacheability means, what does it mean by the cacheability? If it talks about the fourth word or fourth terminology, cacheability. Whenever we are responding certain data, okay, it have the information whether this particular data is cacheable or not cacheable. If it is the cacheable, which means that client could cache this persist locally for some time being. We can set an expiry date so that for the performance purpose, it do not hit this particular for this particular data, it does not hit the server again, so that we can improve the performance. And it's vice versa. It could be possible at the both direction, as well as the server and the client size as well. Okay. Fifth is an optional one, which is the code on demand. Code on demand. What does it mean of the code on demand? Okay. So if we talked about the code on demand, which means that for the increasing the performance, because as we know, the JS code could have ability to run on the web browser. So we can return, or in earlier days, we are using the Java applets, which means server have a capacity to return a compiled code to the client, and which could be an executable format, okay, which can be an execute and help the server to improve the performance, okay. Or you can say it's just tries to delegate some kind of work to do the client. So that is a code on demand. It's mostly in the JavaScript world or the applet world, where we just trying to delegate some of the tasks or more of the functionality, task validation, and all those stuff to the client. Okay. Now the final terms is the uniform interface. What does it mean of the uniform interface? So these are basically having the four guiding principle. So uniform, if you talk about the uniform interface, defines the interface between client and server. Okay? It simplifies and decomposes the architecture, which enable every part to be developed. The uniform interface has the four guiding principle. It have basically the four guiding: resource based. The student is the resource, employee is the resource, anything on which we are going to query or creating the APIs, all those things are be considered as resources. Individual resources are identified using URI. We are giving, for example, local host colon 8080 and then a student. So this is a kind of URI, uniform resource identifier. Okay. The resources themselves are different from representation returned to the customer. Okay. These are the very different represent to return to the customer. For example, server cannot send database but representation of the some database in the record. So why we are talking about the representation? So it means that we have suppose in the database we have around 1,000 records of the student, and which have around 100 fields. Okay, but as a query, or you can say an API, we just return a part of it. Let's say only the 10 student, and which having the ID, name, age, and address. So it is not the whole data. It's just a representation of the state of a student resource. So that is all about the representation. Okay. So which could be in terms of the XML or JSON. Okay. Second guiding principle is the manipulation of the resources by representation, which is basically resources could be specifically the 4 operation we can perform normally, which is known as the CRUD operations, which is like if we talk about CRUD. Okay. CRUD, create means post, request, okay, read means get, okay, and it's put, and delete. So these are the self-descriptive messages, means what the kind, it's a kind of metadata that is required to be processed further. Each message contains the enough information to describe how the message is processed. For example, MIME type. What is the MIME type? Is for example, application, JSON, application slash JavaScript. So these kind of the MIME type, and how the server should behave, or the kind of producer kind of data type. So these are the HETOS, hypermedia application text as a engine, as a state of application engine state, or something like that. Is a full form. As an engine of the hypermedia application state, as the engine of application, as an engine of hypermedia. Please remove this cut. As the engine of hypermedia application state. Okay, customer provide the state by querying the parameter body, request header, request URI, service provided by the customer, state by response codes, response headers, and body content. It is called hypermedia. Okay. In addition, the above description, HETOS is also means that wherever necessary, object or it's contained in its linked body, so supply to the URI, retrieved the related objects, the same interface. Okay, so more I'll talk about the HETOS. Okay, HETOS. So suppose that you have requested for some resource R1. Okay, HETOS simple method. Whenever you're going to respond with a response, it must contain a link tag where if user possibly wants to communicate with other resources as well, let's say R2, R3, R4, and 5. So this is the HETOS. In normally website, if you are going to access any website, you just access the facebook.com. But if you can go to the home, you can go to about us, you can create the pages. So those kind of keeping in mind if you have requested for the resource R1, you must be able to access the relevant resources as well. Okay, so I'll be just just showing some example of the HETOS. Look, this is the example of the this is the actual data which was basically expected, but it also gives the links. It is a self. It is just directly pointing to this particular record. It's a relevant record, which user might be interested to look after. So this is basically known as the headers. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comment section if you have any question. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye.